What is good, Smooth Nation? We are here to react to Goji-Chronica's Super Saiyan 4 Goku versus dcau Superman, and who would win?
So, Super Saiyan 4 is back apparently. I know you guys saw the new Daima episode, or at least clips of it. I know I did. And I'm pretty happy to say that Dragon Ball Z has brought in the Super Saiyan 4 transformation back into canon. So just like that, I knew I had to talk about the form. Obviously, I can't really scale Daima because it hasn't finished yet. Maybe some crazy thing will happen in the final episode, but
Daima is better than GT, but that's not much of an accomplishment because anything's better than GT.
You know, as of now, I can at least
Super
talk
Saiyan
about
4
the
in Daima. It just made no sense. Okay, so they explain all the things about the Demon Realm, about how anybody with pointy ears comes from the Demon Realm, essentially. Well, and y'all were saying that the Namekian unlocked Goku's potential. Okay, but why is his potential look like that? Why does it look like this? I understand that IRL is a reference to Super Saiyan 4 in GT, but no, in universe it doesn't make sense here. Okay, what is this? Is just why is it red? Is this related? Is Super Saiyan 4 and Daima related to Super Saiyan God? Is that why it looks like this?
It makes no sense. Saiyan 4 who started it all. And it's a really special form because it represented like the end of Dragon Ball for a bit. Like that, 10 years of just no content that a lot of the early 2000s kids such as myself grew up with. And during said time period, a matchup was very, very prominent. A matchup that you guys should know. Goku versus Superman. Obviously,
I have finally come to terms with the fact that most of the time Superman's going to win. Because Superman... a character can only be as strong as their universe. The Dragon Ball universe just does not compare to DC. DC has so many high-level reality warpers with an infinite multiverse and all that stuff that the Dragon Ball universe can't compare. The top dogs of Dragon Ball pale to the DC verse. So Superman would win a lot of times. Let's use like the main line Superman. Are there some versions of Superman, like New 52 Superman is a pretty weak version of Superman. Most people agree.
Death Battles covered it too many times to count, and Superman wins. Yeah, if you use comic Superman, that is, but I don't really do that over here. And even in that first original Death Battle, yeah, they were using comp versions of the characters, but the versions that we saw on screen were the DC animated universe's version of Superman and Goku from GT. So I thought, hey, what if I covered and scaled those two specific versions of the characters? Who would win? As today, we have the Goku of the early 2000s versus...
Okay, this Goku should be in the universal tiers because in Dragon Ball Z, Boo was said to be like at least galaxy level, able to destroy galaxies in years. And all this is happening 10 years after that fact, so he should at least be universal plus.
So if that sounds interesting to you, I would implore you guys to stick around. And if you end up liking the video, I implore you guys to subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I think we can hit it at this. Man. Dragon Ball GT is inherently a sequel to Dragon Ball. So seeing as how this is an IP that likes to raise the stakes per arc, don't get
these character designs so freaking ugly.
It's sequel to Dragon Ball. So seeing as how this is an IP that...
What the hell even is that? That thing just looks hideous to me.
It likes to raise the
stakes
per arc. Don't get surprised when I tell you about no names in GT such as General Rildo being stated to be above the Buu saga in its entirety. You remember all those debates about Kid Buu versus Buhan? Doesn't matter, as both of them are weaker than General Rildo. And keep in mind, this is his base form as well. This would mean that at bare minimum, in terms of AP, Goku would upscale feats such as, planet destroying, star busting, solar system busting, and even galactic wiping. So, if you notice, that's pretty much the linear power progression as shown in Z, which GT just upscales once again. And by proxy to this logic, we can also upscale GT Goku off of the many universal scaling chains that we have in OG Dragon Ball Z. As we have tons of these showings as early as the Frieza and Cell Saga, you got Frieza at 50% being able to survive getting hit with the Universal Spirit Bomb, which was said to contain the energy of all the stars and planets in the universe, of which there are an infinite amount of in Dragon Ball. Cell also has some narrative implications to be at that level of power, but the uni stuff doesn't really become consistent in most people's eyes until Buu Saga, where he has tons of narrative and statements that imply he's on that level of power. And as for a feat for Dragon Ball GT Goku to upscale, we have none other than Buhan's Vice Shao, which threatened the entire Dragon Ball Z macrocosm via causing a chain reaction that had him slamming the multiple dimensional space.
This feat always seemed kind of weird to me because it's him shouting out and it's causing the multiverse to collapse in itself. That's not really a power feat as much as it is like tripping someone over feet. Like if you're causing a chain reaction, then it's not that you're strong, it's that you caused the chain reaction. Like if I can remove the wheel from a car and it just while it's going and it falls over and crashes, that doesn't mean that I chucked it over with my pure strength. That just means that it fell over because I fucked it up. So I don't really consider that. That's a pretty weird beat to me.
That make up the cosmology.
I prefer the Super Saiyan God Goku and Beerus.
Everything would collapse. This feat is pretty cool, but it's also pretty confusing, as due to its very nature it's a chain reaction feat, but it's still accepted by most people that this is a uni plus the low multiversal showing. So wherever you scale this feat in particular, Super Saiyan 4 Goku would just automatically upscale, really early into GT, before he even gets to form. We see this pretty early during, his...
That whole, him standing there with a crater, and there's just this little pillar left, that doesn't really make much sense. Because I understand the orb is meant to destroy everything's path. I understand Goku's too tough. But how did the pillar survive? Did he create a shield to make that pillar? Why would he when he can fly? It really just doesn't make sense.
Destroying with General Rildo, who a base Goku post D could just swap hands with. Super Saiyan 4 has no confirmed multiplier above base like his previous forms, but seeing as how Super Saiyan 3 alone is 400 times base, and seeing as how the next forms are usually a couple times greater than the last, I don't hesitate in saying that Super Saiyan 4 Goku would likely upscale Buhan's Vice Shao nearly 1,000 times over. Meaning depending on where you scale that feat in particular, Super Saiyan 4 Goku alone would have low multiversal to just multiversal scaling, depending on where you scale that shot once again. From here, Goku would just become even stronger as he just fights stronger opponents than Baby, such as Super 17 and even Omega Shenron, a being whose negative energy threatened the macrocosm over time, perhaps driving in the fact that by the end of GT at least, he should be around low multiversal, if not just higher. He's even outright compared to Omega Shenron, and apparently according to Gohan, the power gap between the both of them isn't too far off. But this could be a Jiren situation where the writers just write things down without thinking about it. But hey, it's a statement that exists, so I'm gonna talk about it. As for his speed now...
A lot of people claim that Jiren is related to the villain of Daima when he gets the eye thing because the outfits are kind of similar. I don't see the similarity.
Characters in Dragon Ball GT should just upscale Kid Buu, a character who the Grand Kai thought could make it to the Kaioshin realm, which is an entirely different space-time from the mortal universe. And Grand Kai thought he could make this trip without even knowing about his instant transmission-esque move. But perhaps the best speed feat happens around Buu Saga as well, which is an era that has gotten pretty massively crept by the time of GT. But anyways, in said feat, a pre-Buu Saga Goku is able to traverse the infinitely sized underworld in a quantifiable amount of time, granting him infinite speed. And that kind of does it for the consistency, so let's just get into GT Goku's higher ends. And we're gonna have to go all the way back to Baby for this one, as during said arc, Baby was able to make an attack which shockwaves were so potent that they could reach the subspace, which is a 90s, Toei canon area that exists as a place where instant transmission like moves travel in the downtime between wherever they're trying to go to.
That actually is technically canon. They're still going by the guides, then yeah.
So multiple times in the movies, and it's in GT as well. This place is stated to be beyond time and space, and it also lacks both of these things as concepts. So you'll find yourself, coming into contact with some people that use the fact that Baby could casually affect this, realm beyond time and space as a means to argue that Goku by, early GT has fifth dimensional power. Do I agree with these metrics? I don't know, but I'll leave that up to you for now at least. As for Goku's abilities, he has his Kamehameha, his Dragon Fist, which is said to be his strongest maneuver, and he utilizes Kaioken times 20, so wherever you scale him, you can, just times 20 or 10. I'm not sure how much Kaioken he uses. It's in between those areas though, I remember that much. And then you can just upscale the Dragon Fist once again, because that's his strongest move. So wherever you scale him,
I really wish Dragon Fist was canon. He never used it in anything canon. I was like, if Super should bring back Dragon Fist.
Plus, just multiversal, he would scale it to such tier dozens of times over at a low end. Superman from the dcau is often thought of as being one of the weakest Superman iterations. And honestly, it's my theory that due to this version of the character being the first that most 90s to early 2000s kids grew up with, you get a lot of the Goku cope that we still see to this very day. I mean, Dragon Ball aired on the same channel around the same time, and that's a show that's anything but subtle when it comes to its power scaling. So what if I were to tell you that this version of the Man of Steel isn't really the father that people think that he is? It's just a lot harder to assert due to the nature of the Superman show being a lot more episodic, where the stakes can just vary drastically between each week, as opposed to Dragon Ball where you have a pretty blatant and obvious scaling chain. So with that being said, how powerful is the DC animated universe's Superman? Well, he's pretty consistently at a mid-end, anywhere between planetary to star level, as this is by far the easiest and most consistent end of attack potency to argue for the Man of Tomorrow.
I don't even know if I need to watch the rest of the video. That's just not enough.
Because even as early as during the events of his own solo show, he is able to divert a meteor that can destroy the planet Earth. And he's also narratively implied to be able to cause such destruction as mere collateral during battles where he actually doesn't have to hold back. As the strongest member of the league, he should be above Hawk Girl, who can swing her mace so hard that it can divert blasts from cannons, which are explicitly stated to planet bus. He would also upscale this showing due to his status as the league's mightiest, as well as his performance against, Green Lantern constructs, due to said rings being considered the most powerful weapons in the universe, meaning that they would just inherently upscale Hawk Girl's mace. This is consistent as according to the Justice League Fatal 5 film, during an instance where the sun begins to crack apart, it stated that it would require 1,000 Green Lantern wheel constructs to just hold the celestial body intact, meaning that each lantern would individually get up to those dual star level ends via their constructs, and Superman can break them easily. This is also pretty consistent as the scene prior to this, Superman tanked the bomb that led to the sun cracking to begin with, meaning that, we're just heading full circle now. To add on to this, Green Lantern can...
Wait, but the sun also amps him. Well, that's a red sun. Or it's a yellow sun. It looks kind of orange to me.
Beam Class Sinestro, a being who can just destroy planets according to Word of God, as well as narrative. Going into some higher ends now, we can also use the statement of Lantern's rings being the most powerful in the verse to upscale them off of missiles that are able to destroy solar systems verbatim. They can also make constructs durable enough to endure traveling from the Earth to the center of the universe at interstellar speeds. And Superman can just punch them apart, worst comes to worst. He can also box with a Brainiac-infused Darkseid, who isn't that much stronger than his base, which Superman could body pretty consistently. This is important as Metron, a being who has the Mobius chair, states that nothing in the verse at the time will be able to kill Darkseid. The Mobius chair is a construct that gives its user pretty much infinite knowledge, so you really couldn't ask for a better source, when delivering this sentiment. This is important as this verse has massive black holes, solar system busting weapons, as well as Amazo, a robot of incalculable power. This is a guy who can casually soul the Green Lantern Corps in its entirety, as well as move planets effortlessly. Superman barely scales to Amazo, and he's often pretty much shown to be his blatant inferior, but he was able to hit a Solomon Grande who had, a percentage of Amazo's power. Seeing as how that could potentially be infinite, it's not really much of an anti-feat. We can even dive into some consistency, as due to his role as the strongest member of the league, he would upscale Dr. Fate, a character who actually has infinite power, like, explicitly. And he should be stronger than Poseidon's
infinite physical power, infinite magic casting
trident, due to it probably more than likely downscaling the rings of the lanterns. This is notable as Poseidon's trident was able to combat and banish the Lovecraftian-inspired beings known as the Old Ones, which are confirmed to be extra-dimensional in nature. You can use this term to really scale them wherever you want, as we know the DCAU has a fifth-dimensional space, as well as other places that transcend time and space as well. So Superman upscaling weapons that can combat beings which are extra-dimensional in comparison to these places could be used to scale Superman pretty high potentially, but at bare minimum this should be some Unity Plus ends for the Man of Steel. These universal implications can be argued to be somewhat common, as during an instance where Superman's power...
Super Saiyan 4 Goku is way better of a fighter, with more consistent showings of being uni.
Was being siphoned. The user went from being able to destroy planets to being able to consume the entire universe. Some people have tried to downplay this.
I'd say that Superman's probably faster, since we see him fly through space and dodge meteors and stuff like that. Although Goku had a similar feat in Z when he was able to push back the sun in the spaceship. I don't
simply saying that really Brainiac, the being in question, simply gained the power to destroy more planets quicker, which doesn't really mean anything, as Brainiac is effectively immortal to begin with due to his ability to download his consciousness in all manners of technology. So it's safe to say that this possibility isn't something that's taken into account when this statement is said. And plus, we unironically have Word of God that doubles down on both of these sentiments, as we have a writer on the show who's like, yeah, he's going to be able to destroy the universe with this newfound power, and he's like, gee, this should go to show you guys how strong Superman is. He just says that, and it's super clear. I'll let you guys read it, but you don't get any more blatant than this. As for his speed, now he can run on par with the Flash, who is stated to move at the speed of light. But he can also get up to MFTL Plus due to him being able to catch Lobo's bike, which is able to zoom from galaxy to galaxy according to some official guidebooks. But like his attack potency, you can wank his speed to be really high, as due to him being able to keep at relative pace to Green Lanterns, he would get all the way up to immeasurable speed due to John's showing of blocking an attack that destroyed the entire multiverse, starting at a place that transcended time and space. You could also attempt to argue that this level of speed isn't an outlier, as the DCAU exists in the same grander multiverse as the mainline DC universe. It's just a different, multiverse in a multiverse.
Ben 10 would be canon to... It's just to tell me that Ben 10 is canon to DC, because if so, his scaling just went up.
So things like the speed of light in the DCAU can be interpreted to actually just be a measurable speed, as that's the speed that is required to access the Speed Force in the comics. So overall, Superman's stats like AP and speed drastically vary wildly depending on the story, context, or situation. But in conclusion, at a low end, he would find himself in those planetary to star level ranges with FTL speeds. At a mid end, he can get all the way up the solar system to universal with some MFTL plus combat speeds and reaction time. But at best, he would scale all the way up to extra dimensional forces that exist and are referred to as such in a universe where fifth dimensional imps and places that transcend time and space are things that exist, as well as possess speed that isn't really quantifiable. So with the stats of both our combatants analyzed and, just laid out on the table, who between the both of them would come out on top? And to be honest, the winner just depends on how you scale each of these characters. If you want to use the conservative ends, I think Goku would edge Superman out with his universal scaling being a lot more blatant and consistent. But if you were to use the wanked high ends, Superman would probably win due to his scale.
So if you use the wanks, you can bust him. You can bust Superman up to extra dimensional, like 4D, 5D and stuff. This thing, if you're using super and you got the feats like Goku breaking through time dimension twice, then you get Goku to complex multi.
scaling to these extra dimensional forces. But you know, that's the thing. Superman wins with like rat wank in comparison. And he honestly does have anti-feats that would suggest that he doesn't scale as high as said rat wank scales would have him scale to begin with. Like, yeah, Superman scales to the first Amazo, but I mean, not really that much. In comparison, Goku's rat high ends are wank, but at least they're decent. I honestly really think that dcau Superman caps at like Uni Plus. And getting back to some of those said anti-feats, you know, I scaled him to fifth dimensional forces, but he was literally obliterated by an attack that destroyed said fifth dimensional zone. So, and plus, a lot of his higher ends in terms of speed come from the fact that it's just gooning off of him being possibly in the same cosmology as a grander DC Comics multiverse. It's just not very clean to argue, in my opinion. And it's some of the higher ends do hinge on just being disingenuous. You know, Goku is blatantly universal, blatantly even multiversal possibly. And Superman just, you can get him there, but it's not as consistent. You know, a lot of people thought he was just star level. I don't think he scales that low, but I mean, if a lot of people think he's consistently around star level, you know, batting an eye at these higher ends that I propose that have anti-feats is pretty understandable. As opposed to like late Dragon Ball Z level characters, which, I mean, you probably have a harder time arguing that they aren't universal than them just being like low multiversal. That's how consistent that level of power is in the Dragon Ball IP. So seeing as how these are the versions of Goku and Superman that box on that initial death battle, going over each of their independent scaling, I can understand why the backlash was as big as it was, because honestly, I think Goku would mop dcau Superman, but if you want to use dcau Superman's high ends, I give them to you, you can argue what you want. Can't please everybody. So, in conclusion, I think Goku would win, that's my take, but the high ends are there. Just saying, that's why I don't get lynched. But yeah, that was the video. I hope you guys liked the GT scaling. It was honestly pretty fun to touch on the Dragon Ball IP. Haven't done that in a minute. It's one of my favorite anime I've ever probably. So I was more than happy to.
That's about it. Tell what you guys think below. Sood Nation, you are dismissed.